Hello, everyone. It's springtime in America, which means, of course, that the flowers are blooming, the bees are buzzing, and mass shootings are coming in bunches. And we have an extra hour of sunlight to get those in. Springtime in America. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ted Alexandro Show. I am your host, Ted Alexandro, coming to you from an undisclosed location, and thank God it's undisclosed these days, in the northeast of these United States of America. Well, friends, it is springtime, which brings with it a measure of hope, renewal, resurgence, regeneration. But of course we live, those of us who do, I don't know where you're listening to this or where you hail from, so I will not be presumptuous. In fact, I hope and pray that my audience is not strictly American, though I do love all equally. But for those of us in America, certainly any time of year comes with the possibility of mass shootings. Any time of year is the right time. And of late, we've seen a spree of mass shootings. But again, in America, whether they're reported widely or not, the mass shootings are never too far apart from one another. But we've had two high-profile mass shootings in these recent weeks. Notably, down in the Atlanta area, I guess, was it a group of 3 Asian spas, massage parlors were shot up by a, surprise, young, gun-loving white man. God-fearing, gun-loving. That combination is deadly, let's face it. A white Christian terrorist, you might call him, with a sex addiction. Which is what? Woman-hating, dehumanizing, fetishizing, in this particular instance, Asian women in particular, let's face it. So that was a double crime of, he was focusing on Asian women. He went to those massage parlors specifically to kill the Asian women who worked there, the sex workers, if you will. I don't know the nuances of language. Clearly, they were sex workers if you work in those Asian massage parlors. And that's like the worst-kept secret in America. There's one of those in walking distance from your home if you live in America, or certainly within a 10-minute drive. But obviously, those, it's widely accepted that is what goes on there. So this young man with a sex addiction goes and murders 8 people at 3 separate spas, Asian spas, targeting Asian women. So it's like that double hate crime of he was targeting Asians and he was targeting Asian women because he has a sex addiction where he fetishizes, dehumanizes Asian women. So he murders 8 human beings. Some were customers of the spa. Most were workers at these 3 spas. But the little that I've read about this young man, he was in the cult of Christianity, Baptist, I guess, and trying to battle this sex addiction with the help of Christianity and some sort of, rehab, sexual rehab, so that God would cast the sin out of his soul. So, obviously, a hate crime towards Asian people, Asian women specifically, 3 different spas down in Atlanta. The second one, more recently, was a grocery store, supermarket in Boulder, Colorado area, where 10 people were murdered. And I don't know if the shooter was American or not, but he didn't have a white boy name. Let's put it that way. He had what looked to be some sort of Middle Eastern, perhaps, name. Please, I don't know. I shouldn't even say. But this was not a white terrorism as so many of them have been. But it was another mass shooting where this man went into a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, or just outside of Boulder, I guess, and murdered with a gun 10 people. Had just purchased that gun, I guess, on March 16th. So, ain't that America? Ain't that America, where you live in fear, doing the most mundane of things, walking into a grocery store to do your shopping. In Colorado. And I mean, who can forget Columbine, right? And the school shooting that was etched into all of our memories. Michael Moore made a movie about it. Bowling. Is it Bowling for Columbine? I can't remember. But you know the one I'm talking about. And that movie had to be probably 15 years ago. Probably more, because my memory is always bad. So a state with a rich history. We should have it should be a competition of sorts at this point. We should have a state by state competition of mass murders. And Colorado certainly would be among our leaders. God bless America. God bless Colorado. So obviously tragic, sad, unnecessary, avoidable. None of those words will be used by newscasters. Unnecessary, avoidable, entirely avoidable, had we done anything about our gun laws, our pervasive culture of violence in the United States of America, culture of war, culture of murder, culture of fear, pervasive mental illness. Not to tie the two together. I'm not saying that one and the other are inextricably linked, but many times that is the case. Not all mentally ill people are shooting up, spas or supermarkets or on and on, whatever, schools. So it just requires so much more of a conversation than America is willing to have. Thoughts and prayers will be spewed out like so much friendly fire. Load up those thoughts and prayers. Deploy. Thoughts, prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Not to mock thoughts and prayers. They're both. I mean, I live on both of those things. Very important things, obviously, thoughts and prayers. However, sensible legislation, getting guns out of the hands of human beings that should not be carrying them, and deadly weapons, right? Like assault. Isn't that that's a euphemism? Assault weapon, assault rifle. You're not you're murdering. It's a fucking murdering, killing machine. I was assaulted. Welcome to the dearly beloved. We're gathered here because our friend was assaulted and no longer is breathing as a result of that assault. It's a deadly weapon. Can we fucking do something about this? I know the answer is no. But can we look to other countries that have, oh, those countries are small. Who gives a shit? Can we enact sensible legislation that can be upheld? The problem is, we just had they stormed the Capitol a couple months ago? And law enforcement was leading it. So it's all inextricably linked with law enforcement, the military, this pervasive gun culture, and let's add a healthy dose of misogyny and male supremacy, white supremacy. It's such a potent bouillabaisse. Because so many of these mass shootings are former military as well. That gets short shrift in a lot of the reporting. I don't think that was the case with either of these recent shootings, but many in recent years have been former military, right? So the ripples of trauma that go on in this imperialist, warmongering country, the United States of America, and the ripples that have, even for people who served with the best of intentions, right? They God bless them. It's not my mindset, and I don't abide by it, but I certainly understand it. The constant conditioning of heroism and holding up of the military and the police and people with guns. People with guns are to be bowed down to and thanked for their service. And what goes on in those cultures? I mean, I've told jokes about it, if jokes is the right word. The pervasive culture of rape, misogyny, domestic violence in military circles, in the military, in police, right? Disproportionate rates of domestic violence, abuse, alcohol abuse. So what pain are we dulling, and what is causing all of this ongoing ripples of trauma? And, and I realize that I'm talking about a lot of different issues right now, but perhaps this topic deserves it. Perhaps this topic deserves an exploration of all of the varied, intertwined threads that lead to one after another of these mass shootings, these murders in the United States of America, where nothing is done. And thoughts and prayers and God bless and all of these things. So, in particular, the mass shooting in Atlanta has touched off a movement of Stop Asian Hate. You've likely seen that hashtag on social media, Stop Asian Hate. And my guest today, comedian, actress, social activist, Helen Hong, we'll talk a little bit later about her experience and her family's experience with attacks, be they verbal or physical. So the Asian American community and Pacific Islanders, forgive me if I'm getting the language. I'm new to a lot of it, but I think it's AAPI. There's been spikes going back to even Trump's presidency, and obviously with the coronavirus, calling his sort of branding it the China virus, and Kung flu, and all this kind of bullshit, which feeds into all of these things we're talking about: white supremacy, the othering of these communities, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, this notion that you are not American, and we saw it back with 9/11 as well, where Muslim communities attacks were, pervasive and on the rise, and even surveilling of Muslim communities, surveilling mosques and what have you, othering, and in fact making them terrorist suspects. Everyone was a suspect. And now with the pandemic, attacks on Asian people, Asian Americans. are on the rise, and the othering. So it's this ongoing, at the root of it is so many things. White supremacy certainly is at the core of it. And America's gun culture is at the core of it as well. And, will real conversations be had by a government that is largely white males beholden to men with guns, constituents, donors with guns or backing the weapon industry? So I'm sure all the right things will be said by everyone from Joe Biden on down. But will any hard questions be asked? Will anyone be taken to task? Will the gun lobbies and will the NRA and will our pervasive kind of the intractability of having any real legislation addressing these ongoing massacres and this recent one in Atlanta tied to Asian American women specifically, Asian immigrants. So there's a lot of conversations to be had around these shootings. And I know I put a lot of things out there because I've had a lot of things on my mind. I've done some jokes, again in quotes, about I guess a lot of the stuff that I did about it was around the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. And I remember, one of the things that I talked about on stage was the fact that there was a spike in suicides amongst the survivors of that shooting, right? Another thing that's not talked about enough. Just like with veterans, people that are around traumatic experiences with guns, with weapons, with murder, with killing, with observing and seeing, being in those situations firsthand where you're observing murder, mass murder, the loss of life, shooting. Those are so traumatic, those experiences, that people spiral into their own experiences with post-traumatic stress and their own experiences with depression and many cases of suicide. So, as I said, many ripples of trauma, many ripples of dysfunction, many ripples of unaddressed core kind of causes, and obviously the many effects that ripple out. But you can only hope that some of these thoughts and prayers will reach the proper destination, wherever that might be, and that real conversations will be had and real legislation will be put in place. It is hard to imagine in this global empire that is America, that is so built on weapons, munitions, global domination, war. Though we put an apple pie face on it, that is truly the underlying business that we are in. So is it any surprise when these mass shootings by these lost souls, these damaged human beings that inflict so much pain on other human beings and families, and again, the ripples of pain and trauma that go out from there, it's really incalculable. So it does beg a more truly in-depth conversation, and I don't think it's from lack of conversation, honestly, like with so many other issues. It's not from lack of conversation. It's from lack of a government that truly can respond to the needs of the people. There's an overwhelming desire for legislation, for changes in gun legislation, for all of the various, background checks and whatever, the magazines or whatever the hell else, all the gun jargon. I think they should be banned. How's that? I have a very simple solution. The banning of guns for everything from police officers on down. no guns. Guns are illegal. What now? Fuck you. My Second Amendment right. You piece of shit. That's a violent response. You know? That's the thing. People that have guns at the center of their lives are not going to respond with nonviolent language. They're going to respond violently because that is at their core. And I understand that they're beautiful, gun-loving, God-fearing, God-loving, gun-fearing? I don't know. Whatever you might be. Whatever you fear, whatever you love. It's not that important. But the real problem is that we can expect this to continue, right? We can expect it to continue. All the flowery speeches from Biden on down to the local officials in Boulder, in Atlanta, you can say all the right things about the families and God bless them and the loss and the tragedy. You know? You can say all those things. But until real legislation is put in place, taking guns out of the hands of citizens, this will continue. So, lots to talk about, the intersection of so many things. As I said, the spike in Asian assaults, hate crimes, specifically older Asians have been targeted in recent months since the pandemic started, the most vulnerable populations, you would think, because of this atmosphere, which, let's face it, you can directly attribute to Donald Trump. So when people get on me or get on people who said, like, yeah, Biden is the lesser of two evils. Biden's not going to call the pandemic the fucking kung flu. Flawed as he is, lacking as he is as a leader, his entire history, he's not going to enact progressive legislation. It'll be better on some fronts than Trump, for sure. But he's not, I'm talking about the most basic of things, simple things. He's not going to call it the kung flu. He's not going to call it the China virus. And those are the kinds of effects that those hateful words of Trump, those cavalier, hateful toss-off things that he throws out there that are red meat for white supremacists, whether they identify as such or not, that is what cultivates a culture of hate and white supremacy that pervades and results in Asian people being attacked, either verbally, physically, what have you, with guns, murdered. So, lots to talk about. Harrowing times, but, always interesting times. And I feel very lucky that we have Helen Hong to delve into a lot of these issues with, because she is always interesting to speak to, and obviously uniquely positioned with her family and her father. Some of the stories she will tell, uniquely positioned to share a perspective on the Asian American experience. And as always, we ask you to please subscribe, ring the notifications bell, like the video, and hop into the comments. Leave us something juicy. Do not, I repeat, do not hold back. And if you wish to support the show, patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. We have lots of bonus episodes there. The Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy. 12 classes so far. Number 13 coming this week, answering your questions. Lots of good questions coming in. So I will be answering those. Excited to get to them. As I said, lots of good, interesting topics to delve into, and I'm sure we'll spring off into a lot of other side tangents, as I tend to do. So looking forward to class number 13, patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. And you can also support the show at rockfin.com/Ted Alexandro. And breaking news, I'm going to be starting a brand new live stream there with Eddie Pepitone. That's right, it will be weekly, every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Eddie Pepitone and I mean, that's going to be, do not miss that. That will be explosive. It will be unpredictable. It will be a lot of ranting, I'm sure. So looking forward to getting into it with my friend, the Bitter Buddha, Eddie Pepitone. We will see you this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, my friends, very excited to welcome today's special guest. She is a hilarious comedian who I've worked with many times in New York City and around the country, around the world, in fact. She's a very talented actress. She is a committed activist, and she is my friend. Let's welcome to the show, Helen Hong.
Hi.
Helen,
Hi. Can you
how
hear me?
are you? I can hear you perfectly. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
great.
Oh,
Yes.
good, good, good.
Oh my God, it's been so long.
My goodness, I think the last time we saw each other was up in Montreal. Is that right?
Yes.
At the
Yes, absolutely.
festival?
That makes sense. That's because I can't remember a time after that. And you've had a baby since then.
I've had a baby since then, and we have another one about a month away.
Oh,
Thank you,
congratulations.
thank you.
Holy crap, house parenthood.
Oh man, it's exciting. It's crazy, but yeah, just I mean, the pandemic has allowed me to be home for my son's whole first year, so that's been very
We can
nice.
talk about my impending parenthood
Oh my
once
goodness!
we start.
Congratulations! Oh, I
Thank
love it.
you.
I love it.
Once we start, yeah.
Fantastic.
Are we
Oh,
start?
good.
Have we started? Have we started?
Yeah, we have,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
we have and we haven't. Who knows? Well, let's just jump right in. Helen, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for making time to be on.
It's an honor to talk to you. I love you, Ted. I love your stand-up is brilliant. Your activism work also brilliant.
Thank you, Helen.
And it's we're like-minded people. So I'll always,
That is
yeah,
true. That is true. I love you as well, and all the work you've been doing over
thank
these
you.
many years. Yeah, yeah. Always happy to see you doing great things, both on stage, off, acting. All of the realms that you are so busy in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I feel as though I have to say, I contacted you several weeks ago, and then in the interim, there was this shooting, so
Ugh.
that it was like this bizarre thing. Like I didn't want people to think like, oh, you call up Helen. I was like, I actually booked Helen before.
By the way, that has happened. I will say the shooting has been great for my career. People are calling me left.
Unbelievable.
I
Yeah.
mean, but I'm happy to do it
Of
because
course.
we
Of
need
course.
to shine light on it. And if it
Of
takes a
course.
shooting, no, I that's actually horrible. That is a
Well,
horrible
well, you know
that is a
what? I mean,
horrible thing to have to shine light on it.
of
But
course. Of
here we
course.
are.
Yeah, yeah, and I probably would have called you anyway, but I'm glad I called you before. So yeah, I actually wanted to get your perspective because you have been so active in the social justice spaces, the various movements that have been ongoing, and this, as you say, has really shined a light upon the struggles of Asian American communities. The hashtag Stop Asian Hate. This has kind of been a growing kind of illumination and opening of the
Yeah.
eyes for many Americans. Let's face it, white Americans who probably, much like Black Lives Matter, were not aware of the extent of the problem. So, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what this has opened up?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously been dealing with racism for as long as we've been in this country, but the past year since the pandemic started, it has been so bad. And I have a relationship with Now This, the media company Now This, which is a big platform on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And I made a video for them a full year ago
Wow.
talking about this
Now, was this
because
the one with your father, or was it because I saw
no,
one with
this
your
was
dad?
a set. This
Separate.
is one I did a whole year ago
Wow.
where I said we cannot be calling this the China virus because heads up, viruses do not have nationality. Viruses do not have ethnicity.
So absurd. Yeah.
And like and calling it the China virus, joking that it's kung flu, like these have real world consequences. And even a full year ago there were random attacks on Asian people. Then at the very beginning of the pandemic, at the beginning of lockdowns, people were getting harassed, beaten, spit on, a year ago. And so
Yeah.
this has just been escalating, escalating, escalating. And then in recent, like in the last month or two, these random attacks on elderly Asians, that's a fun new twist.
Unbelievable.
Like
Yeah.
a fun left turn. It's like, okay, we've been picking on Asians. Let's pick on old Asians because they're
Yeah.
so self-defensible. That's like, yeah, so that's been happening. That's a new thing that's been happening the past month or two. And then
Wow.
culminating in this shooting, it's just the whole thing is so awful. And I think a lot of the reason why, like you said, the rest of the population has not been that familiar with it is because um, newly immigrated Asians and older Asians, like a lot of the first generation Asians,
Hmm.
they don't want to complain about this stuff.
Sure.
They don't report it. They don't go to the cops.
Mm.
They don't make a big deal. They don't go to news organizations. They don't make a big deal out of it because they're stoic. It's part of Asian culture to not make waves. It's part of Asian immigrant culture to be like, ugh, we're in this country. We don't look like anybody else. We don't really want to make trouble. We don't want to like make a lot of noise. We don't want to make waves. We just want to like put our head down and just plow through it. We just want to
Hmm.
survive,
Hmm.
and that is the take that a lot of the older generation and a lot of first generation take. Meanwhile, those of us that were born and raised here and speak perfect English are like, fuck that. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on your podcast, but like,
Absolutely.
fuck that.
Yeah.
We're Americans. We were born and raised here. We went to school here. We speak perfect English. We're part of the culture. Like, fuck that. Like,
Yeah.
we're not, we're tired of this shit.
Hmm.
We are part of this country. We are productive members of the society. We pay taxes. We go to school. We go to work. Like, fuck you guys. Like,
Hmm.
we don't deserve this.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of that culture clash of
Hmm.
like, my dad was a victim and he was like, totally didn't report it. Not only didn't report it to the cops, but didn't even report it to the supermarket where it occurred because he was like,
Now, this was during the pandemic or prior?
this was a month ago.
A month ago. Wow.
This was February 4th that this
Wow.
happened to my dad.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I feel like I'm a face of, I've been very, very vocal about this issue because it's not only my community, it hit home for me. Like, this happened to my dad.
Sure.
Physically, my dad was physically assaulted in a supermarket parking lot 1 month ago, February 4th. And so these are not like out there in the ether, like stuff that we're hearing about on the news. This is like, this happened to my father.
Sure.
This happened. My mom has been verbally assaulted. My mom's been given like shitty side eye looks,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that I think is the most enraging is like a lot of these attacks are being perpetrated on people who are the least self-defensible.
Sure. Sure.
Because I said to my dad, I was like, if I had been there, I would have shredded that motherfucker
Yeah.
because I have the language and ability,
And as a
and
comedian, you're used to you're
I'm
used to
I'm
going
used
at
to,
people,
oh
right?
my God,
Yeah.
like I would have shredded him. I would have taken his balls and just, you know what I mean? Verbally,
Yeah.
verbally. I would
Of
have
course.
shriveled his balls verbally.
Yes. Yes.
But because
Well
I'm
within
used,
your rights to do so.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say, you talk about this kind of growing rage within the community at these ongoing types of various assaults, be they verbal, physical. Uh, did it happen for you with when your father was accosted, assaulted verbally? Did that further? Had you kind of? Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, had you found that anger and that rage already, or were you even kind of? Were you ever guilty of that generational thing of being like, all right, let's.
No, I definitely had the rage,
Yeah.
but I didn't. I don't think I saw the extent of it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I knew this was happening a year ago, but a year ago it seemed to me, and I think it seemed to a lot of people in our community, that it was isolated incidents,
Mm-hmm.
in in these racist pockets of the country,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're rural, maybe they're like the Midwest where there's not a lot of Asians. Like, it just didn't seem like, it seemed kind of like, yeah, I know it's happening, but it seemed like it wasn't its own epidemic. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't a pandemic of its own. Like, it was like isolated incidents, a handful here and there.
Mm-hmm.
God, that sucks. But like, it didn't. But now, for it to hit my parents,
Mm.
that means like everybody's experiencing it. Do you know
Sure.
what I mean? And the fact that it's like wildly underreported, the
Mm.
fact that my dad didn't report it means most people are not reporting it.
Yes.
And the numbers bear this out. Like, the organizations that are doing work on this are like, the official numbers are just scratching the surface. Right now the official number count is about 4,000 cases of hate incidents against Asian Americans, and we know it's way more than 4,000.
And is that during the pandemic, or what is the
Yeah,
context?
during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Wow.
During the pandemic,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, it's got to
of
be.
of it's got to be way more than 4,000.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we're mobilizing now is we're seeing the extent of it, and we're seeing it's not just happening in these podunk hick places. It's happening in San Francisco, which
Yes.
is like half of San Francisco
The
is
most
Asian.
Asian. Sure. Yeah. The
I
Bay
mean,
Area.
it's happening. My dad's incident happened in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
which Boston prides itself for being a liberal, highly educated, erudite bastion. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, there's trash in Boston too. There's
Sure.
trash in LA. There's trash in San Jose. There's
Yeah.
trash
Of course.
trashy racists literally everywhere.
Yeah.
And in Vancouver, they're in Canada, they're having a huge spike in assaults. And a friend of mine is from Vancouver, which is like San Francisco. It's like half Asian, the
Mm-hmm.
population,
Sure.
and the spikes are so high. So it's not just isolated incidents of like hick idiots on meth
Yeah. Yeah.
toothless meth addicts going after, no, it's like people at the local grocery store here in our cities.
Sure, sure. And yeah, well, I mean, you would think 70 million people plus, right, vote for Trump. And I'm not going to say all of them share that worldview, but you would think a good majority of them share that kind of joking about things in the
For
way that he
sure.
does. I'm curious for you as a comedian, because I'm sure you've seen over the span of your career that kind of dismissive, let's face it, hack, but also
Oh,
dehumanizing jokes that we've all seen, like, when you work some B room, or maybe sometimes not even a B room, where they caricature what an Asian person is.
100%, 100%. And I don't know if you saw today that Jay Leno just came out and apologized for the decades of Asian jokes that he's made.
Wow. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that the Judge Ito thing was like a big, right? The Judge Ito during the OJ trial, that was like a staple of ongoing, right?
yeah, like Jay Leno publicly came out today and apologized
Wow.
for
Good for him.
like the years and years and years of Asian jokes.
Wow.
And and me as an Asian American comedian, I'm exposed to a lot of comedy that I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards as a
Consumer.
consumer of
Yeah.
comedy. Like,
Right.
I'm forced to watch a lot of hack comedy because I'm
Yeah.
in the business.
Yeah.
Um, I've always said, and every Asian comedian has witnessed this, every random Asian person has witnessed this, like, the jokes that are made about us, if you made an equivalent joke about the Black community, you would get shredded. Like,
Right.
it's absolutely, the jokes that are made about us are absolutely unacceptable
Hmm.
to the Black and Brown community. If you said an equivalent type of joke about Black folks or
Hmm.
Hispanic folks, you would get murdered. You would get eviscerated. You would get run out of town. But for
Yeah.
some reason, Asian jokes is fine. We are the last racial punching bag.
Hmm.
Um, I've long said this. It's like you can just casually make like Asian jokes, and there have been reports recently, like Amy Schumer's made jokes, about like Asian pussies and how she can't compete with Asian pussies, and Tina Fey. Tina Fey is like very known amongst the Asian American community for like very problematic
Mm.
like anti-Asian material and stereotypes material.
Hmm.
So it's just acceptable in our community and in our society. And it's because we are the newest immigrants. We are
Yeah.
the smallest minority group.
Right.
We've only been coming to this country en masse for, about 60 years, 60,
And I
70
guess,
years.
yeah, and I guess that dynamic that you spoke of earlier of people not wanting to make waves, or I guess there's that rite of passage that you want to be able to take a joke too, right? And kind of just
Totally.
laugh it off, even if it is
Totally.
offensive.
And also there's a language barrier. There's absolutely a language barrier, and that is a huge portion of this. Like my dad, when I was talking to him about his attack, we were speaking mostly in English, but then he switched to Korean. He said, I know the guy was like screaming things at me, and I know there were like he was saying obscenities, and if I had a stronger grasp of the English language, I could have cursed him out
Mm.
right then and there. Like if he's cursing me out, I could have just cursed him back out. But I
Hmm.
don't. I don't have that language. I don't have the grasp of the language to be able to just like, fuck you guy, like the
Yeah.
way that I would,
Right.
the way that if
Right.
he said anything to me, I'd be like, what the fuck did you say, motherfucker? Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yes. Sure.
Like my dad just doesn't have that the linguistic ability to just come back at
And
someone.
yeah, and you don't want to be further kind of feel further vulnerable by
Exactly.
right engaging in, yeah, when you don't have the
Yeah, like a
grasp.
lot of that stuff could get just shut down in the moment if you could clap back right then.
Right.
If you could just clap back, like what the fuck did you say, like shrimp head or whatever you like, whatever it's like, you could just come back with a retort. But
Yeah. Yeah.
recent immigrants, they just don't have that at their fingertips,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of just like, well, I guess I'm just sucking it up now because I can't do anything else. Like, what else can I do? I'm not gonna swing a punch at the guy.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny you bring up about comedians too, because I used to do a joke about fake Chinese and how like when you're, like just that this it was more of a phonetic thing of just like the fun of like if I'm ordering Chinese takeout as I'm going through the menu, I phonetically say it to myself. And then I call out people telling them that there's been advances in fake Chinese. If you're still just if you're still doing like the ching chow ching, like so
I think I remember this bit. I
so I
remember seeing you do this bit.
but I stopped doing it for that reason. Because I mean, it made me laugh, and I thought it was coming from the right place and all that. But I kind of stopped doing it because I felt like I don't want to be in that gray area of like hurting someone. But I mean, I hate saying this because so many it's like the outline, but it's true. A lot of Asian people would come up to me and say after the show, like, oh, she speaks fake Chinese, or you know what I mean. So
Totally.
yeah, so I kind of felt validated in that, like I wasn't coming from a hateful place. But even there,
Right.
I felt like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing this joke just because,
Yeah.
it's the climate changes and
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be like in a place where it was hurtful to a community that
Ge-
is marginal.
General rule of note: if you feel like might this be icky? Like, am I getting a slight icky feeling? It's icky. Don't do it.
Yeah.
That's the general rule of that should be the general rule of note to humanity as a whole. Like if you're laughing at something and you're like, "That's funny," but I don't know if there's something about it that's a little icky.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
it's not cool. It's not
Yeah.
cool.
I agree. And as
Um,
comedians, we have that sense too. You have that sense. And
for
if you
sure.
keep going when you have that sense, that's like the worst feeling, really.
That's what Jay Leno claims,
Mm.
is that he says over the years, like he always knew deep in his heart it was wrong. Well,
Wow.
but he
Made
plowed ahead.
made a lot of
He
money.
plowed
Yeah.
ahead for that roof, for that
Yeah.
laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say about doing stand up in B rooms. Like for years I had a bit where I would say, like I would call out like Asian stereotypes. Like for years I had a bit where I said Asian stereotypes are so widely varied. Like as an Asian woman, I'm supposed to be good at math, and I'm supposed to be good at laundry, and I'm supposed to be good at shooting ping pong balls out of my vagina. And I just don't think the same person can be good at all three of those things. I'm not good at math. So that was a joke I did. And I
Yeah.
would do a lot of jokes like that, like send ups of Asian stereotypes
Sure, sure.
and sarcastic. And I there would be like places where people like I got that from the comments that I got after the show, like they didn't get the sarcasm of it.
Yes, yes,
They thought they took the joke at face value.
yes. Yeah, there's
Where
something that hurts about.
she's one of us. She's making fun of her people the way that I make fun of her people. Where
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm making fun of you.
Right. Right. Very
Making
big
fun of
distinction.
us.
Yes.
Like there's a sarcastic level, but there's definitely people that do not get the layer of sarcasm, and they just think like, oh, well, she thinks it's funny.
She's
What I
making the
think is
joke.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. So it's okay for me
Yeah,
to make.
so that's actually why I sort of pulled back on doing those bits. I think it's
Mm.
similar to what Dave Chappelle said when when he left the business for a minute,
They
where
were
he was
laughing for
like,
the wrong reasons.
they were laughing for the wrong reasons. Like he was doing all these jokes, sending up like racism, and like hick KKK type people would be like, "Yo, bro, that was hilarious," and he was like, "Oh, you're not getting
Mm-hmm.
the layer beneath the layer that
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to." Yeah,
Sure. I wanted to ask you just to circle back to the video that you did with your dad. Can you talk a little bit about that? I saw that piece. I don't know if it was on your Instagram or one of
yeah.
the social media platforms, but it was so powerful. Can you talk a
Thank
little bit
you.
about that?
Yeah, so I started during the pandemic. I started a YouTube channel with my dad called Old Korean Dad Stories, and sometimes Mom. Um, and it was a way for me to get closer to my dad. Lives in Boston, and I live in LA, and I haven't seen my parents in a year and a half because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so it was a way kind of to sort of have face to face time with them, but
Hmm.
also like my dad's a Korean War survivor. He just has all these incredible life experiences that I haven't really like dug into.
Mm.
Like my dad's this fascinating person with these incredible stories, and I haven't really dug into them because he's my dad, and I talk to the guy like once a week, like whatever, like how are you? Fine. How's golf?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so I started this YouTube channel to sort of like dig into some of the cool stories. And then as part of that, I said, like I told you guys to be careful because there's all these Asian attacks, especially on Asian elders. And he's like,
Mm.
well, it's funny that you say that because something happened to me a week ago.
Mm.
And that's when he shared this incident that happened in a supermarket parking lot where he was putting a cart back in the cart corral, and an employee of the supermarket, the guy who like collects the carts from the parking lot, started yelling obscenities at him, and
An
then
employee of the store.
an employee of the store,
Wow.
an employee of the store who was out in the parking lot doing his job, collecting the carts, started like yelling obscenities at my dad and pushed a cart at him full force,
Wow.
from about 7 or 8 feet away. And he was a younger guy, so he had power to it. And my dad said, I mean, he pushed this thing so hard at me, had it actually hit me, like it would have broken my kneecap or, like damaged a hip or something.
Mm.
But as it happened, it grazed over his big toe. And when my dad got home, the big toe was black and blue.
Wow.
Like he was injured. My father
Yeah.
was injured in this attack. And
Yeah.
then my dad was like, like my dad said, like I mentioned to you before, like my dad doesn't have the language to like retort and be like, "What the fuck was that?" to the
Hmm.
guy. He was just like, "All right, I don't even really understand everything that he's screaming at me right now. He's clearly like a little bit unhinged, so I'm just going to let it go." So he
Yeah.
went into the store, and the reason why my dad was at the supermarket in the first place was he was returning an item, so he went directly to the customer service desk. The guy followed my dad in, thought that he was complaining about him
Oh,
to the
wow.
customer service desk, and that started again screaming obscenities at my dad.
Wow.
And the lady behind the customer service desk was like, "What is that about?" My dad was like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it."
Mm.
And so the whole thing is so enraging to me because I'm like, you had the opportunity right there to complain. Like the lady, she witnessed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody witnessed this guy screaming at you
Yes.
inside the store, and you just let it go. And he's like, and this speaks to like what a compassionate person my dad is. My dad literally said, "I didn't want the guy to lose his job. We're in the middle of a pandemic."
Wow.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Dad, that's so nice, but what the fuck, Dad?
Yeah.
Like, get your shit together, Dad. Racists deserve to lose their fucking job, Dad."
Yeah. 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 They have other things they need to work on.
So
Wow.
like it was that said a lot. So, and it was interesting because I posted the video and half of the comments are split on the video. Like half the comments are like, "Your dad is so kind and empathetic, and God, that was so sweet and thoughtful of your dad to just and forgiving, like it's such a bigger person to be forgiving." And then the other half of the comments are like, "What the fuck,
Fuck
Dad?
him. Yeah. Yeah.
Dad, you should have reported, because now that guy's gonna do it again, and he's gonna do it to someone else, and next time the person might not be so lucky to just get a black and blue toe, like he might actually inflict damage." And that's how I feel. And it's
Yeah.
again like what I said earlier about this generational, there's a generational split,
Sure.
and a cultural split.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of it is Asian culture. A lot of Asian culture, East Asian culture especially, is like, suck it up,
Mm-hmm.
don't make waves,
Mm-hmm.
just keep your head down and just keep doing your work and doing your own thing, and don't get involved in stuff like that.
Mm.
And that's a very Asian cultural thing, that's very ingrained.
Mm.
And then those of us that are American, because we grew up here, are like, fuck that.
Right. Right.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Make all the waves, make
Yes.
all the noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Do not shrink. Yeah. That's
Mm-mm.
well. Yeah. No. It's fascinating, and I'm sure your dad's taking all of that in too, right? Because it is such a
Yeah.
different time now, and having you as a model too. I'm sure there's some reassessing going on.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I wanted to ask you, Helen, maybe to wrap up, because I did tell you about 30 minutes. I've been so impressed with and taken with your activism and your involvement in social justice, progressive movements over these past several years,
Thank you.
notably the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Thank
Can
you.
you talk about, you're welcome. Yeah. Was that like a shift for you, or what was the impetus for kind of, because for comedians, as someone else who's been involved, it's rare to see comedians who kind of put that at the forefront and
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
unabashed about
For
articulating those things.
sure. Especially for someone like me. Like, I'm not a political comic. I don't talk about, I find it very divisive. I feel like political comedy is a really hard thing to do well. I've seen
Agreed.
a lot of it done very poor. You and I have seen a lot of it done very poorly,
Yeah.
where it's just soapboxing at a
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
point. Like, the bottom line is you got to be funny, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you got
Yeah.
to actually make them laugh.
Sure.
If you're just soapboxing, then you're not a comic anymore.
I
And
agree.
I've never found myself to be able to do it, to make a lot of those social issues funny on
Yeah. Hmm.
stage. So I very shy away from it, and there's very few jokes in my act that are like, activist jokes, or
Right.
really like hard hitting social issue jokes.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I just took it as just like a separate, like I'm a human being. And so this is my job. My profession is stand-up comedy. And then and then on a completely separate track, I'm also an activist, because I'm a human and I believe very strongly in these issues. And
Hmm.
I campaigned for Bernie hard in 2016. I campaigned again for him in 2019.
Hmm.
And because he speaks to me, and I feel like, aside from the comedy, like, I'm a human being, and I'm an American, and I'm a patriot. I consider myself a patriot.
Hmm.
And guess what, folks? This is shit. We're in a shit storm. We're in a shit storm. Like,
Mm.
that my biggest argument is like, this is not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what is happening happening is not fucking working. And
Yeah, let's try something else.
anybody who thinks this is fucking working is a millionaire, and that is not the vast majority of us. And I'm very proud of like Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins,
Hmm.
and people who are millionaire, Warren Buffett, people who are millionaires who even are like, yeah, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Please tax me more so that I don't have to see homeless people fucking everywhere. I am
Right.
willing to pay more taxes so that we all can have health care.
Yeah.
And I hope, when I am a millionaire that I still have that attitude, because this is not fucking working. Like the American dream is broken for the
Yeah.
vast majority of us, and this is not working. And I don't feel good. Like I make good money, I own a house, like I'm doing really well for myself. It doesn't feel good to walk down the street and see a homeless encampment down the
Right.
block from me. It doesn't feel good that I have to, that I'm seeing all my friends do GoFundMe campaigns to pay for their cancer treatment.
Hmm.
Like, that's
Hmm.
fucked up. It's fucked up.
Yeah. 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 No, especially in the arts and comedy, we see that all the time where, whether it
Stand-up
is
comics, like, none of us have health care.
right. Yeah.
Stand-up comics, like, we're just grinding, and like most of us are, we're living hand to mouth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like so
Yeah.
it's not working. It's not working. So let's try something different.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention, you mentioned as at the very beginning that you are about to become a parent.
In a very weird way.
Okay.
So,
That's
so
even better.
I decided years ago that I never wanted to be a mommy. I never wanted to be a parent. Like, I'm extremely self-centered. I love being the center of my own universe.
Oh yeah.
I'm not particularly maternal. So, I bought a house in the middle of the pandemic with my sister, who very, very desperately wants to be a parent. But she doesn't have a partner, and she's like, I don't want to wait any longer. So she's what they call a single mother by choice.
Hmm.
She bought sperm out of a catalog,
Nice.
which is a whole other thing.
High
She
end, I hope.
she bought very nice sperm, very high end, expensive sperm out of a catalog. She got that shit turkey basted up
There
her
you
hoo
go.
ha,
There you
and
go.
it took. And we have a baby due in May, and I live in the house where she lives. So I guess I'm going to be like, the joke in our house is she's a single mother by choice, and I am a single mother by no choice. I have no choice.
By
This baby,
address.
this baby is literally on the other side of this wall.
Oh
So,
man, that's amazing.
we have a baby due in May, and
Wow.
I'm going to be co-parenting this baby because my sister is doing it by herself, and I realize how hard that is. And
Yeah.
also, I live here,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
baby's going to live here, and I'm not going to be like, "Yo, I'm going to my room. Good luck with that shit." Um,
Right.
I love my
Yeah,
sister
you
very
can't put up
much.
those foam barriers in every part of the house, right?
Although once the baby actually comes in, I'm not sleeping. I might be like,
That's
I'm
true.
foaming the shit out of my room. But
Yes,
yeah, so we have a baby due in May, and I'm
great.
co-parenting. I agreed that I would be co-parenting in as much as I can.
That's so
And
great.
yeah, so I'm kind of gonna be a parent in
I
May.
love it. Congratulations to
Thank
both
you.
you and your sister.
Thank you.
And
By the way, I'm definitely writing a sitcom,
yeah.
and it's gonna be called Modern as Fuck Family.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I have a feeling you're going to be more maternal than you let on. So I think it's going to be a good deal all around. Well,
Thank you.
Helen, thank you so much for making time. So great to catch up with you, and
Absolutely.
I'm
Thank
always happy
you.
to hear all the great things you're up to.
Thank you. And I appreciate your activism work so much. You have been really, I really have looked up to you so much, because you were out and loud and very vocal even before I started my own activism journey. So I look up to you. I think you're fantastic, and you're a brilliant comic too as well. And I always list you as one of those people that, like, you gotta check out this. Like, I don't know why he's not famous, seriously. Um,
Thank you.
but
Thank you, Helen.
also, and I know your listeners and followers are also like super woke, awesome people. So if you can, please with the Asian attacks. If you see something, say something like legit, for real. Don't just stand by. And there's a great organization called Asian Americans Advancing Justice. That's a great organization that you can look up if you want more resources, as well as Stop AAPI Hate. That's another organization.
Excellent. Yeah, and if you send me those links, I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Helen. Thank you so much. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah,
Be well.
absolutely. Bye.
Bye-bye now. Thank you so much, Helen Hong, a great comedian, a wonderful actress, a very dedicated and committed activist, involved in all sorts of causes. And I will put the show notes of the links that she mentioned. Those links will be down below. So thank you so much. Always great to catch up with you, Helen Hong. And that is our show, friends. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you wish to support the show, please do so at rockfin.com/Ted Alexandro. Of course, at patreon.com/Ted Alexandro. Lots of bonus content to be had on both sites, and more will be posted at Rockfin. That's just in the beginning stages, so content and videos will be migrating over there. The Ted Alexandro Comedy Academy will be available over at Rockfin as well. So please, a bit of patience as that gets built up. But thank you, of course, to all of you who have been supporting. It is very much appreciated. And as I said, lots of great things coming up. I'll be live streaming with Eddie Pepitone. That will be coming up. I think our first one is Sunday, but I'll be posting about that on social media. So please look for that on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. First live stream with Eddie Pepitone. As always, we thank our executive producer extraordinaire. She rules with an iron fist, but a heart of gold. How does she do it? Well, one thing, her third eye is squeegeed quite clean, squeaky clean. Thank you so much, Madeline Geraldine. I love you very much, and I love your belly. And thank you to our music maestro. He is the man who provides the musical bed upon which we lay, Pro DLC. Check out his music wherever music streams. He just recently released Season 7, so check that out. His music, it has been released in a series of seasons, and this is Season 7. Check out Pro DLC. And we thank our producer emeritus, the man with the plan, always lurking in the shadows, always at the ready. He is Matthew L. Weiss.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, friends. Be well. Stay safe. I hope there's a spring in your step and a song in your heart. Until next time.